Hello everybody and welcome back to the HLTCO YouTube channel. The focus of today's video, and there's a couple of people who have asked me to do a video on it and I think it's probably worth exploring in further detail, concerns the proposed takeover of Everton from Farad Moshiri to 777 Partners. And there are a number of reasons why I think this would make an interesting video to do. Of course, whenever you've got a club of Everton's stature and pedigree within the English game, a change in the boardroom will always generate interest from both a partisan and neutral perspective, but there are also very interesting aspects to this deal which I think do deserve further explanation and a little bit more of a peer behind the curtain. You know, as I always say with these videos, I am well aware that the vast majority of Everton fans who are watching this will not be given new information as such. I'm sure they are well across it and everything that is going to be discussed in this video will already be common knowledge to them. But as an explainer for people on the outside of the Everton bubble who maybe want to know a little bit more about the 777 group and exactly how they will fit into the Premier League and look to take Everton on, it's something which I think should be quite interesting. So to start off, it's important to suggest that 777 First of all, it's important to explain that 777 are a group who, according to them, boast businesses across multiple different sectors that total out at about $10 billion. Whether or not that figure is legitimate remains to be seen, and you will understand why I'm saying that, I'm sure, by the time this video has come to a close. But they say that they have stakes in 60 companies across various sectors, including insurance, consumer and commercial finance, litigation finance, direct lending, media and entertainment, sustainability, and budget airlines. So I'm sure you can understand there that when you read that, it feels as though they are spread quite thin, and why you would necessarily want a footballing group as an investment opportunity, I can't quite get my head around. But of course, there has been huge interest in the Premier League over the last 10 or 20 years. If they actually do become ratified by the Premier League and the relevant bodies, it will take the number of principal owners in the Premier League who are US based up to 10, which is obviously quite a significant shift in recent years. But you know, the main reason I suppose for this video on them today is that they will probably be the most stern test yet of the seemingly beefed up fit and proper persons regulations that have come in from the Premier League in recent times. And there are a multitude of reasons why that would be the case. Probably front and centre in all of them is that there are genuine accusations laid at their door about fraud. Now, whether or not these will come to be prosecuted in a court of law remain to be seen. You know, you've got a situation where 777 themselves strictly deny that any of these accusations towards them have any substance. But, you know, it does lead you down a path of wondering exactly where Everton will be in a few years should this potential change in the ownership structure of the football club be given the green light. The two principal individuals involved are called Josh Wanda and Stephen Pascoe. They were the principal individuals who came to actually found 777 Partners back in 2015. But with the number of accusations that have been laid at their door, I think it's fair to say that a fair chunk of the Everton fan base are a little bit worried about the long-term direction of the football club. If you actually look at the mechanisms which have led them to this point, Farad Moshiri, of course, has been the principal owner, I believe, of Everton for around 7 years now. He has poured a huge amount of money of his personal wealth into the football club, and it seems as though he is well ready to part ways and, you know, wipe his hands of the situation. Whether or not the Everton fan base on an individual by individual basis have apathy or adoration towards Farad Moshiri, I suppose, comes down to personal preference. What is clear is that the club's financial footing in recent times has come under real scrutiny because of the construction of their new stadium at Bramley Moor Dock, the potential financial hole to actually get that completed and greenlit to actually host matches, and to make sure, first and foremost, that Everton as a football club can remain in the Premier League, because we all know that the last 2 or 3 seasons of their on-pitch battles have seen, you know, relegation scraps, last day escapes, and genuine worry about whether or not they will be in the Premier League from year to year. Sean Dyche, of course, is now in the dugout, and whilst he does have pedigree in terms of keeping a club like Burnley afloat, it doesn't necessarily feel at this stage of the season as though they are a football club that are guaranteed to still be a Premier League team by the time the summer of 2024 rolls around. So there is all sorts of uncertainty both on the pitch and behind the scenes at Everton, and whilst of course you would hope there would be boardroom stability, it has become plainly obvious in recent times that Farad Moshiri is not a man who has the financial muscle or indeed the emotional will to continue leading that football club, and he has tried different avenues in terms of investment in the club from outside parties, and instead has reached upon this point where 94% of the shares will now, it seems, be transferred to 777 should they get the green light from the Premier League and relevant bodies. Undeniably, the most interesting aspect of 777's potential takeover of Everton comes in the fact that they would be part of a multi-club model. There are numerous clubs across the whole of the planet, let alone Europe, that come underneath 777's ownership umbrella, and I will go through them now just to give you a flavour of the degree of pushback there have been from different fan bases as to the ownership of 777 across Italy, Germany, France, Belgium. You've got all sorts of problems that have cropped up. In Italy, you've got Genoa, one of the oldest, in fact the oldest professional team in Italy. They were taken over by 777 2 years ago and actually fell out of Serie A back into the second tier in the first full year of 777's ownership. That in itself obviously created a fair amount of apathy from the fan base. They are now back in Italy's top tier, but there was also an issue in which they were actually docked a point for failing to pay outstanding taxes and contributions in September and October of 2022, while 777 themselves have stated on the record that it was a mere administrative error and nothing to do with an actual lack of funding. Of course, if you are a supporter of Everton or indeed any of those clubs in that multi-club model, it would set alarm bells ringing. In terms of Sevilla, they have a small percentage holding in that particular football club, although everything I have read and heard in relation to that particular deal suggests they are kept very much on the periphery of any boardroom discussions or decisions that are made. There is a certain degree of apathy towards them from certain individuals within Sevilla's hierarchy, and they are looked upon, I suppose, as something of a cash cow, something to be used rather than embraced, and it remains to be seen whether or not they will have a long-term standing at Sevilla. In Belgium, you've got Standard Liège. They completed the full takeover of that football club in March of 2022. The main theory or suggestion from that particular ownership model is that there has been a lack of investment in terms of on-pitch transfers to make sure that Standard Liège are competitive from week to week and year to year at the top of their domestic division. Of course, the bread and butter and the be-all and end-all for many football fans comes down to the overall performance of their team on the pitch, and even though there have been plenty of reports to suggest that 777 have put a fair amount of money into the day-to-day running of Standard Liège, if they aren't investing on the pitch, then they are always going to get a degree of pushback from a club that expect to be successful in their domestic division from year to year. In terms of Red Star in Paris, it's a very murky situation. They are a club, admittedly, in a city in Paris that have PSG as the real headline grabbers, but Red Star are looked upon as a very much an idea of a football club, shall we say. And there is a quote here from Jean-Luc Mélenchon, I believe that is how you pronounced it. He was amongst several politicians who signed an open letter in Le Monde Daily denouncing the deal that saw 777 take over. He said, "For us, Red Star is a common good that cannot be sacrificed at the altar of profit. They urge the government to scupper the sale and defend a different version of football to the one that 777 were looking to move forward with Red Star as part of that multi-club model." And probably the most high profile and recent pushback, I suppose you could say, against the 777 ownership model came at Hertha Berlin a couple of weeks back. They actually had a message in the stands from their ultras. It read, "Wanda, insurance for football fans, ? Our investments are called identity and co-determination. Josh Wanda, the only thing we assure you is our disapproval of you." So, it's fair to say that there are a multitude of problems in terms of 777's ownership across their different football clubs. I'm not suggesting it's a guarantee that they won't get on well with the Everton fans and end up pushing them on to new heights. But I think, if you were an Everton fan reading all of that, or potentially watching this video, or indeed just having spent the last 2 or 3 weeks doing your own research into 777 as an ownership group, you wouldn't feel too enamoured at the idea of them coming in. And maybe it is a case of better the devil you know. I'm not suggesting that Everton fans should just accept and put up with the likes of Farad Moshiri and Bill Kenwright. Of course, they want to see the club kick on. They want to make sure the new stadium can be constructed. And it seems as though one of the main driving forces for Farad Moshiri Moshiri in getting this deal over the line is that he can now, with some degree of legitimacy I suppose, suggest that the stadium will be completed and the financing will be put in place to make sure that all goes through. But realistically, if they are to drop out of the Premier League, for example, at the end of this season, do they want that financial millstone around their necks? Yes, they have put themselves backed into a corner, really, in relation to having to have it built. But if you are going to be changing the ownership over from Farad Moshiri to 777 and you're part of this multi-club model, I dare say there are plenty of Everton fans who are genuinely concerned about the next 5, 10, 15 years. Because in essence, a multi-club model that you are at the top of should work in your favour and your benefit. You have access to a scouting network across the globe. You have seemingly the ability to allow the best players to rise up the hierarchy and reach your first team if they are good enough. But of course, if you have an investment group that are so thinly spread across not just numerous football clubs, but numerous different business ventures, as I've already discussed in the video, it does lead you to a point where I feel, and I say this as a Palace fan, I want to feel as though our owners are directly involved and emotionally invested in the football club. We have Steve Parish, a Palace fan who is the face of the football club, but there is American ownership. There are Josh Harris, David Blitzer, John Textor. There is a very complex situation behind the scenes there in terms of the balance of power. But we all know that the only one who is truly emotionally invested from day to day is Steve Parish. Yes, that is the nature of the beast when it comes to modern football and the amount of financing you need to be competitive at the top end. But it doesn't leave you feeling particularly connected to the football club that you support. And I do genuinely feel for Everton fans here because, a decision has been made on their behalf from Farad Moshiri to allow 777 principally to come in and buy 94% of these shares. I don't think it necessarily safeguards their future. If anything, it makes it more uncertain if that was possible. And that in itself is something that football fans all over the country have to contend with now. Because the people that are in charge of our football clubs don't truly care about the fabric of that society, of that particular section of the country. They care about the fact that it's the Premier League, that it's a hugely lucrative product, and that they can, if they play their hand right, make sure they make huge amounts of money. As much as football has always been spun as something that can turn a millionaire into someone who isn't, or a billionaire into a millionaire, I think that has slightly shifted in recent times because of the amount of commercial involvement, because of the ability for the Premier League to reach so many eyeballs across the planet. We have seen clubs skyrocket in value, and I think that is exactly why 777 are so keen to get involved with Everton, even though you can look at the immediate and suggest that it's far from your ideal business opportunity. The Everton Shareholders Association have recently announced a statement accusing Farad Moshiri of treating them with disdain. They said in the statement, "We received only a few minutes of warning of this proposed change of ownership. It's disappointing, and yet again, the poor timing of club announcements before important games is baffling. The owner and the club continue to treat shareholders and fans with disdain, and we encourage the current and proposed future owners to walk their engagement talk immediately, that fans are the most important asset at any football club." And I can completely get on board with that. There is this feeling, I think, not just at Everton, but across the entire Premier League, that fans themselves are being sort of pushed to one corner more and more. And you can understand it. Whenever big finance does take hold of any particular sector, there is going to be a shedding of, that connection that exists emotionally. But football, as I've said, and many people have said many times before, is not a normal business. There is a huge amount of emotional investment, and that in itself can be very easily and quickly abused. And if that is the case, then they will have a very vocal and directly involved fan base in Everton, making sure that they make their feelings known. So, as I said at the very beginning of the video, I don't expect this to have enlightened many Everton fans as to anything new. Maybe they've picked up a couple of little tidbits across the course of the video that they weren't aware of, but really this is an explainer for a neutral as to 777, their role within the game currently, and how exactly it may well affect Everton across the next 5 or 10 years, if indeed that fit and proper persons test is signed off, because of course there is still the possibility that they do get turned away at the door, and quite where that would leave Everton and Farad Moshiri in terms of the financial hole they find themselves themselves in at the moment remains to be seen. There's plenty more that will run with that. They have an impending hearing coming up about financial fair play regulations and whether or not they've broken those. I think that's set for October. So, you know, everywhere you look, really, there is carnage when it comes to Everton Football Club. And amongst all of that, you've got Sean Dyche trying to get enough points on the board to make sure that they can be a Premier League team beyond May of 2024. Other than that, there isn't a great deal for me to add to this video, so I will sign off there. If you are someone who has enjoyed it, then please do consider giving the video a like and maybe pushing the subscribe button. I also record a podcast, or 2 podcasts every single day, Monday to Friday. One that is specifically related to Crystal Palace, delivered straight to your inbox by 8:30 AM, and one that concerns general football, whether it be across the Premier League, the EFL, Spain, Germany, Italy, France. It is all covered from day to day on there. If you are interested in either one of those podcasts, it is £3 a month. There is a link to my Patreon in the description of this video below. Other than that, I will leave it there for today. Hopefully you're all having a lovely time, other than the fact that if you are an Everton fan watching this, there will be a degree of apathy and worry, I guess. But, you know, that is part and parcel of it, and it's exactly why I have decided to record this video today. Other than that, I will sign off there. Thanks very much, and thanks for watching. Cheers.